I look up into the sky. It's just a massive skyscraper like all the others in downtown Houston, except this is a hospital with people with cancer in it. And it dawns on me why I'm so overwhelmed in this moment. And it's because I'm walking into the building that I'm going to die in.
Joel Neeb, welcome to the show, brother. I'm excited to have Joe on here. He was a fighter pilot for 15 years. Incredible man of God, family man, the CEO of multiple companies over the years. Currently is involved in helping to grow the fourth largest tech company in the world, and just an incredible human being who is pursuing his purpose and pursuing his potential, really doing the most to maximize his life. So welcome to the show, brother.
Skylar, thanks so much. The feeling is definitely mutual. I've really just admired from afar your approach to the 2-day CEO mantra, how you've been leading people for the kingdom work, and it's been such a pleasure getting to know you.
So let's start off with your journey as a fighter pilot. How I'm going to ask kind of an interesting question, right? How does that tie in, or does it tie into business, and to like how does that play out into your daily life? Those experiences.
Yeah. So being a fighter pilot, for me, it was completely transformative. In the sense that not only the fact that I went from driving a car one day to about 4 months later being able to fly the airplane upside down, faster than the speed of sound, 3 feet away from another plane. That was all incredibly transformative from a skills perspective. What I witnessed, though, was this machine in the military with elite teams that was able to take people that were pretty average, just pretend, especially me coming into it, you wouldn't have tapped me on the shoulder in high school and said, that's the person that's going to go fly $50 million fighter planes. But they had this system and this machine that would transform people, and they would leave that machine different individually and leave that machine as a team. And so I made a mental note as I went through this, extremely difficult, but also extremely transformative, that I wanted to be a part of those types of transformations for the rest of my life. So since then, I've looked at opportunities to bring exactly that experience from my early 20s into everything that I do.
And then let's talk for a moment about what happened. So give a little bit of context in regards to your cancer battle and just that whole journey, man. It's very powerful. You wrote a book on it. So Joel's actually an author, an incredible book. His story is just quite profound. But would you mind sharing just kind of what happened?
Sure. So I started flying in 2000, and in 2010, I was on the top of my game. I was, interviewing to be the next Thunderbird pilot, which is like the Navy's Blue Angels, except better, right? Air Force. And a little Air Force Navy joke. And then everything's going great in my world. I couldn't have felt better. I was in the best shape I'd ever been. And literally out of nowhere, I get this cancer diagnosis. And I had this little nagging pain on a scale of 1 to 10. It's like a 1 or a 2. I'd already talked to the flight docs about it. And every time they'd say, like, you're working out too hard, or you have an infection, take this. And it would go away. It was kind of intermittent. So it was never anything I worried about. And then all of a sudden, it went from nothing to, okay, it might be cancer, to, okay, it definitely is cancer, but I'm sure you'll beat it, to now it's looking like it's stage 4 cancer, this particularly rare type of cancer that we don't know much about. Matter of fact, you're probably the first one in the Air Force to ever get it, and your life expectancy is 18 months.
What were you feeling at that moment as you got that diagnosis?
Completely destroyed. There's no way to describe. There's no way to prepare. You'd think, this guy was a fighter pilot. He's used to, hard environments and enduring. None of that really helped me in this moment. At least it didn't feel like it did. I curled up in the fetal position. I remember that at night I'd watch the fan spin above the bed that my wife and I slept in. And I would just be thinking about, what's going to happen over these next 18 months. And did I just have the best day that I'll have for the rest of my life, as this is a slow slide into, getting worse and worse and worse. I'd think about the pain of dying. I'd think about the spirituality of this moment and my relationship with God. And I wouldn't sleep a wink. And I would just pray for morning so that I could get back up. And then morning would occur, and I'm like a zombie because I haven't slept at all, and I'd pray for night, and the night would take over, and I'd watch the fan spin again, and it just went like this for days.
How was that affecting your family, and how did your family play into this at that moment?
So at the time, we had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, my sons, and my wife and I had only been married for 6 years at this point, and this is when your question was, how did it affect them? In such an amazing way, positively, I watched my wife step up. And, you said I wrote a book, and that was a great honor to write my book and tell that story. What I learned being at death's door, there's another book that absolutely has to be written, and that's about my wife and how she went from what I describe as, somebody who would get anxious when her purse spilled, and that was a bad day for her, to now stepping up and guiding me through the biggest nightmare of all nightmares, knowing that she's enduring just as bad of a nightmare herself. And then, of course, the part that you and I both know as well is, in addition to my battle, we found out at the same time my son had a tumor in his lung. And so she's facing the fact that she's most likely going to lose one, if not both of us in the next 18 months. And this all happened within a matter of weeks. And you would think that would have destroyed her, particularly given where she had come from in the past in terms of what she was able to endure, what she chose to endure. It did the opposite. I was just blown away how she became the rock of the family and how I was destroyed in this.
Wow. It reminds me of the verse, James 1, 2, and 3 and 4, right? And we talk about that. It's I actually pulled it open here. I was thinking about that this today. It's right. Consider it pure joy, my brothers. And it's funny because I believe in this version of the Bible. This is the CSB. It actually added sisters. It usually says consider it pure joy, my brothers. But this says consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various kinds of trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance finish its work so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So it's powerful. Like her journey, right? Her journey of going through that completely transformed her, and her ability to handle pain, and her ability to lean into God. And I bet that improved her relationship with Christ. Like the whole thing was just profoundly impactful for her. And yet there's so many times where we avoid the pain. We avoid the discomfort. And like Jessica right now, she's going through some health challenges. And I can see that work happening inside of her. Like, because you get to a point where you can't battle it yourself. And so she's kind of just left up to God and whatever happens in some certain instances. And so she's having to just lean on him alone.
And you think, we live in this age where we're not supposed to feel pain, is what we're told, right? You medicate it away.
Or we create safe spaces to help people avoid all pain. Yep.
We're never supposed to experience these things, and we want to nerf everything. And I get that. From a parent's perspective, that's my first reaction too, that I want to do that. But we have to remember that pain is where the transformation occurs. And, I'm at 46 years old right now, and I'm going through what somebody might call a midlife crisis. But what it really is it's a tension between whatever successes I've been afforded in the past to what does it all mean, and is there a way to connect that to significance in the future? And I see my friends going through the same thing. I'm not unique. Everyone experiences this right around the same age. But I also see some people choosing to medicate that away because that tension is painful, and it's sometimes scary, and it's unfulfilling to be at that transition point. But what I've learned, particularly through cancer in my life, and again since then, it's that those valleys, that pain, is really the impetus for the change. And the worst thing you can do is numb it in that moment. You got to lean into it. If anything, feel it more, right? Allow God to transform you through that pain, because it's a message to you for what's next.
So much wisdom right there, man. You're on a powerful journey. It's kind of neat how we ended up meeting. Want to share that story, or just what was coming up for you, or what you were thinking about when we ended up meeting?
Yeah, that's such a wild one. We could piece even more of it together to figure it out, but at this point, it just blows my mind. So I go to Europe, and like I said, I'm going through a bit of a professional crisis in my mind, and crisis is probably too strong of a word. I'm trying to figure out how to transition the work I've done in the past to more significance in the future. And I've been blessed with a lot of success, or at least a lot of success from my perspective at this stage, and I'm figuring out ways to channel that into a next chapter. And so I went on a vacation with a mentor of mine, brilliant guy, the most prolific Christian leader that I know, named Pat Gelsinger. He's the CEO of Intel. And when I'm on this vacation with him, I was looking forward to kind of picking his brain and saying, Pat, I'm at this crossroads. What should I do next? And he knows tech inside and out. He knows what my capabilities are because we've worked together in the past many, many times. And so I'm figuring he's just going to say, do these 5 things and look at these 3 companies, and here's the path for you. And instead, he says, that's a great question. What do you do next? I want you to go fast for 24 hours and then come back to me and let me know what you think. And I was like, well, my neighbor could have told me that, right? I'm looking for advice from the Fortune 100 CEO guy. Like, tell me what I should do next. And instead, I went and fasted. And to be honest, the fasting experience, I didn't really do much for me except make me hungry. I prayed throughout it. And then the very next day, I'm at the gym, and I get a phone call. And, of course, that phone call was you. And I never answer the phone at the gym, and I never answer a phone number that I don't recognize. For whatever reason, I answered it this day. Step out of the gym. I'm all sweaty and breathing hard. Who is this? It's Skylar. Are we still on for this call? And I was like, I don't know who Skylar is, and I don't have anything on my calendar. What's this all about? And do you remember what you said? You said, I don't have anything. I don't know what this call's about either. And now my interest is piqued, and I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Why'd you call me? And he said, but I got this on my calendar, and so, I'm trying to figure out how we know each other. So long story short, when you roll the snowball back up the hill, we did get introduced. So Brant, our mutual friend, introduced us. But I'm sure this happens to you all the time. I probably got 5 this week where they say, hey, you two should meet each other. Here's an introduction. We'll set up a call. But a lot of times nothing comes of it, right? And I know for sure neither one of us took any steps forward. I didn't on my end. It doesn't sound like you did either. And this appointment happens the next day. And so I just love those little God winks in life. And I've gotten a lot of those, particularly in the valleys and particularly when I'm listening and paying attention. And I knew as I heard more about your program, I'm like, gosh, how did I ever doubt that God was going to do anything? Because at this point, I just had a day of being hungry, which didn't amount to much. And God showing up the very next day with this program.
Wow. And you went through it. How was that?
So Rise of Kings was phenomenal. I knew nothing about it. So we were talking about this last night. A lot of the other guys watched videos. They kind of knew what to expect. And, I just went in it with a complete open mind. And I was, I best put it this way. Jeremy, one of your head coaches, says to us, this is going to be a transformative experience. And some of you aren't going to believe that it can be transformative in 3 days. And I want to talk to you at the end of day 3. And I was one of those guys. I was like, I've been in the business of doing events and doing, transformative, inspirational experiences in the past. And I do a lot of keynotes and presentations. And so I'm like, okay, I get it. We'll do trust falls in the backyard and go firewalk or something. And I couldn't have been more wrong. And I love being wrong on that. It was just so personally transformative. And he even made the comment, you're going to walk out of this and feel like brothers. And I'm like, okay, it's 72 hours. Come on. I mean, what can you do to us? There are Navy SEALs that don't walk out of the program feeling like brothers after 8, weeks of that. How is this going to be so transformative? And I was very happily proven wrong.
So cool. Yeah, I'm glad that you're a fellow brother now, man. In Ruck, it's cool having you involved, and yeah, it was neat seeing your experience. What would you say now? You're on the journey of moving into significance. Like, what is that? There's a lot of listeners that are. Right. There's the full range, right? We got guys trying to get their businesses up and running. We got guys that have very successful companies. We have guys that are looking and in that same space of, hey, what's next? And what should I be moving towards? And what I've found is that if you can live on purpose and find your purpose and reach for that, like, significance through Christ, there's nothing more impactful, no other more impactful way to live your life than living on purpose. And so when you mention that, like, hey, I'm looking at what my next level is, what my next move is, and I want it to be tied into significance. And it's not significance of proving yourself, right? It's not that significant. Like, hey, I want to prove that I'm significant, right? It's the significance of, hey, I want to be significant in the world. I want to make an impact. I want to leave a dent in this world. And so, that's what it means to me. So for you, like, what's that journey look like, or what does significance mean to you, and why is that so important to you now?
Yeah, great question. So you brought up a really good point. The significance is not for myself. It's not to prove it to myself. And there was a long period of proving to myself. Yeah. That's really what
for a lot of men.
For a lot of men. And I don't actually begrudge that. I think that you have to have something that you're successful at before you can share it with others, right? Sometimes people rush too quickly into significance. And so, it's the whole put on your oxygen mask before you help the person next to you kind of thing. And so for me, I could have gotten caught in that self-improvement, even professional improvement, team improvement cycle, which was very, very necessary for me to have something to share in the first place. But if I could spend the next 10 years just chasing more dollars, chasing bigger companies, chasing, that sort of thing. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. If that's your purpose and you're reinvesting your money in a direction that you feel, spiritually connected to, phenomenal. That's your path in life. But I could also tell that there was a slightly different path that I needed to pursue that wasn't quite so focused on building out teams and companies and profit margins. And so I felt that tension. And I also know that a really important part of this is that God doesn't need us in this equation, right? God's not up there biting his fingernails waiting to see if you and I are going to step up and take on these roles and go provide significance, because he knows that he's going to do it with or without us. His plan's going to be taken care of. But we do have the option to be a channel for that. We have the option to be a bystander, to watch that transformation. Like today, we're here at Rise Up Kings for the next class that's going to go through. And I'm just so in awe, not of the profound things I'm going to say, but of the transformation I'm going to witness in these folks, and that I get to be, for a moment, a bit of a channel for this transformation in whatever way God, brings me to the table over the next couple of days. I just can't wait to watch this take place.
Yeah. There's nothing for me, nothing I'd rather do. And I haven't, and I don't know when this episode is going to come out, but I haven't mentioned it to the public yet. But we just sold Superior Restoration last week. So exciting. And we found a really incredible organization to acquire Superior and partner with them. And it was one of the, just amazing. And that was 13 years, right? 13 years of work. And towards the end of it, though, I really got clear. I loved Superior. I loved the team most of all. However, I wasn't making the impact that I felt that I could. And I knew there was more for me to give back. And so I went on a journey, a very similar journey, right? This is about 5 years ago, of getting clear, like, Lord, where do you want me? Like, where can I use my gifts? How do I make the biggest impact while I have this time on earth? Because we hear the parable of the talent, right? And like, we need to be good stewards of what he gives us, not only financially, but also of our actual talents, right? Because it could be financial or it could be our talents. And so how am I stewarding my talents? Am I making the biggest possible impact to the kingdom with my talents that I have? And I'm very clear on like what I'm good at. And I wasn't at Superior. I wasn't able to make that impact. So that's when I started to really also systemize it and get the right people in place so I could start to walk away and really pursue like where I could make the biggest impact. And so I think that, I think that journey for me is just, pretty powerful.
And I love the way you approach this in your book, 2-Day CEO, and how you teach this to other business leaders. Because effectively what you do, hopefully everybody will get this analogy and has seen Star Wars. I think it should be a requirement as an American. But a lot of us want to be Luke Skywalker at first, right? And we want to be the ones. I was a fighter pilot. So Luke Skywalker out there fighting the evil hordes. But the real goal is to be Yoda, to be in the background and to be helping others to become their next person. The trick, once again, is that Yoda didn't become Yoda without studying this by himself first and having his own personal successes to be able to share, to have that wisdom to be able to impart. But as quickly as possible, you got to take the shine off of yourself and blend into the background as you're allowing your team, Superior, to run it by themselves. I mean, you're 2-Day CEO. The whole concept is that you're extracted from the equation and the system still runs itself, which seems to our big egos like the biggest hit of all. The company never needed me. Was it really ever me in the first place? All these things that our egos would make us fear as men, and yet it's the highest honor to be able to take a step back and watch that system still thrive.
I love that analogy. And guys have a difficult time with that, giving up that power. And it is an ego hit when your organization no longer needs you. And so and my team's kind of mentioned that's something that I've really taken to heart. I do my best to allow my team to make decisions. I'll hand off stuff. Hey, what do you think about this? Right? Even in our team meeting, there's some things that I push off, right? I used to run those meetings, but I want Jeremy running those. I want him leading all of that. Like, I want to stand in the back. And the difficult part with Rise of Kings, I'm kind of needed to be in the front, but I would be just as happy being in the back and creating this movement and seeing this thing happen from behind the scenes. And also there's power in like God's allowed me to have some certain successes and some certain struggles. Like I'm able to share my story. And I'm glad you share your cancer battle, your story, and everything you're going to be going through over this next couple of years, because like that's what people resonate with. And for me, it's right, my struggle with pornography that I had for years, cheating on Jessica early on, like these really difficult things that I went through that almost broke me. Now I'm able to be in front and share those stories so I can serve other people.
Yeah. You think about how most of the time these days we see people's highlight reels, right? Social media is effectively mine. Go look at mine right now. I'm not showing you. I was sitting in the middle seat on the flight out here fighting over the armrest the entire time, but I'm not posting that, right? I'm posting when I go to Europe and all the fun time. And because I'm showing that we're no different. All of us are sharing the highlights of our lives, but behind the scenes, the trauma that's taking place, the challenges are always there. The failures, any successes I've been afforded in life are preceded by 1,000 failures. And I'm no different from anybody else. What I love about your book is that you went into the failures because, it's one thing to see Superman. It's another thing to understand how Superman came from Clark Kent and how that transition had to take place along the path. Because I can respect Superman, but I'm not going to see myself in that. Because I'm flawed. I have problems. I have challenges. But when I see the transformation you made along that path, that's when it's really powerful. But it requires you to be vulnerable in the process.
What would you say is one of your biggest leadership failures?
Failures, yeah. So I would say I have a ton of them. And so I can tell you I'll rattle a couple of them off. When I was a new leader in the flying program, so I went from a student pilot to an instructor pilot right away. It's called First Assignment Instructor Pilot. So I graduated from the program, turned right back around, and I was an instructor in that program. And I said, I'm going to be the type of leader I wanted, because my instructors were kind of standoffish. I didn't feel like they helped us as much as they could. And so I said, I'm going to be a brother to these students, and I'm going to lean in. I'm going to be right there, elbow to elbow with them. We're going to work together. Here's what I missed. There needs to be a boundary in leadership. There needs to be a separation between the leader and his or her team. And, heavy is the crown, or heavy is the head that wears the crown. And that's absolutely true as a leader. Leadership is a privilege, but it's also lonely. And it's intentionally lonely because you have to be able to lead them through the hard times, hold them accountable when they're not making standard. And sometimes even some of that negative persona that you're projecting is exactly what they need from a coaching perspective. And I didn't understand that as a young leader. And it manifested itself in my team didn't respect me. They were, even though I was leaning into them with all this training that I never received, they took it for granted. They weren't doing it themselves. It was a great lesson around creating that healthy boundary with you and the rest of your team.
So you were too close and too nice. Like there's a time where you could actually be too nice and too overly connected, almost to the point of seeking their approval. Like that could happen, right? You're trying to be a great leader, but you're also in a way looking to gauge how they're taking everything in a way that could be seen as searching for approval with your team. And that is very ineffective, right? Because I've done that many times as a growing leader. They didn't respect me. And how I knew they didn't respect me was they were making very poor decisions. I had one guy that I think I talk about it in the book, I don't recall, but where he went and the whole team was working on a job, and then one of the guys flooded an entire hotel room because they went out drinking. They got drunk, and then the guy fell asleep in the bathtub, and then flooded a hotel on the job while we're drying out another building. We're drying out a hospital. And then so it just showed, man, like I didn't have the respect for my team, and they thought they could do whatever they wanted, which really negatively affected the company.
Yeah. It's like kids, you see a parent, everybody can think of this when they're growing up, the parent that tried too hard to be friends with their kids and right. And how poorly that went. And as leaders, we need to have that same approach. I've learned, whether it's raising kids or building teams, love and boundaries are the two things. And the line between them shifts sometimes. Maybe you need a little more love with this team. Maybe you need a little more boundaries with this team. But that's your ability to assess what they need, not just what you need to get in return from them for your ego, for your serious acceptance or validation.
It's kind of like the way I believe God works. It's truth and grace, truth and love, right? So he's given us both. He's being very direct with where we're off and where we're sinning, but then, man, he's got a ton of grace for us and love and connection. So there's a beautiful, we need both of those. If it's just truth all the time, right? No love and grace, man, it's brutal. but then just love, just grace, no, man, we will take advantage. Human beings take advantage of that, right? So we got to have both of those things when we're leading other people. What else? What else was another leadership? I enjoy these stories. So another leadership, maybe in business, a leadership fail.
So another leadership fail. So now I'm CEO at Afterburner, and we went through.
And what was Afterburner? Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah, so Afterburner is a team of former fighter pilots, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, all former elite military personnel. Most of them went off and got their MBAs first, and we hired them into this company to help translate exactly that experience that I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, where you take young men and women, 18, 19 years old, and transform them into this highest performing elite team on the planet. And that those principles scale. So what we did in that environment absolutely scaled to the big $100 million transformation that a company is pursuing, or blowing out their sales pipeline, or you fill in the blank with whatever the mission is. Those same concepts translated very, very well into that world. And so I ran that consultancy for the last 5 years. I didn't found it. It's been around for 30 years. Great company I knew about before I left the military. And so the challenge I'll talk about was as towards the end of this time now, where we ran into the pandemic, and like every other consultancy, the pandemic just decimated all of our business and all the opportunities. And so we had to make the hard decisions about how much do we retract the team during this time. We had a lot of cash saved up. It's a high profit business. And so how long of a runway do we need for this? How long is this pandemic going to last? How do we keep morale high? And how do we protect people, but at the same time keep them engaged and productive? Because we knew that if they were idle, it was going to be just a challenging time for the morale of the team. And I'll be the first to say, like, that was a really challenging period as a leader to try to navigate that, and continually guessing at when this would be over with. Surely we're just a quarter away from the pandemic being done, I said, every quarter. And so we always made these plans for what was going to take place on the other side of that quarter, and it wouldn't come true. Now, the good news is the company was completely solvent, and we're still doing fine. The challenge was we were always waiting for the next opportunity that wasn't arising, and we should have shifted strategy earlier instead of continuing to execute with the old plan. And so as the leader, that 100% on me for not making a shift to the strategy and saying, this may not be over in a quarter, and if it's not, here's our plan to go digital and to develop software. And we ended up doing that in the end. I wish we had done that about a year and a half earlier, and we would have made a lot more progress.
And tell me about going into family, right? Faith, family, fitness, finances. What is your? It seems like you've done a great job being a dedicated husband and father. What's a lesson learned raising your kids, right? You're a high performer, right? You're a very high performer. You produce more results than most human beings, and you also have a family to take care of. At that point, what's something that you've done really well? And what's something that you kind of wish you would have shifted or was a good learning lesson?
Yeah. So like you, I'm constantly in search of like the life hacks. And I say like you because I love how you approach business in your book, and the word systemizes in everything that you do. And I'm the same way. I want to figure out the path of least resistance. I want to figure out what's scalable, replicable. I learned that as a fighter pilot. I learned that when I reinvented myself after cancer, when I had to go into the tech world, when I was easily the dumbest person in the room on the subject and just had to completely relearn all these things. And so again and again, I've seen that there are processes to succeed. A bit of almost the magic secret formula, right?
Yeah. Frameworks.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And so from that perspective, that I would call that a plus. And I think that people should seek those out. But then I'll translate that into how it became a negative for me.
With family.
With family in particular. Yeah. And so because I felt like I had these life hacks, I would share them with my family, and I'd be like, don't worry, here's the 5 steps that you need to take, and go read this book, do this, that, and this. And my kids were like, I can take it or leave it. They didn't really have that much for it. They had never experienced the pain of struggling through it, right? And so for them, this is like saying that you're not in good shape. I wish I was in better shape, and then I just send you all these links to fitness plans on the internet, right? Do they work? Sure. I'm sure every plan on the internet is going to be about eating a little less and working out a little more. but you're not really emotionally tied to that yet. You're maybe not ready to take action against it. And so as a dad, as a leader, I resented that because I said, this is what I would have loved to have had. And so I was a disciplinarian. I was very much saying, well, if they're not going to do it voluntarily, if the spectrum goes from excited engagement, there's a compliance level as well that I can enforce. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with enforcing compliance with your kids, always to a specific end, always with love, and always assuming that at some point it's up to them to take the mantle for excited engagement. For me, I got stuck too long in that compliance stage. I held them at extremely high standards. Oh, by the way, standards I would not have held myself at an earlier age, certainly not at the age they are right now, right? And I missed all of that because all I could see was my present state, and everything was easy for me, which is wonderful, but it's also a curse when that's the only lens that you have to look at the rest of the world.
Yeah, I almost embrace and happily accept the challenges and the struggles because it just creates more realness for me to be able to engage and empathize, right? Empathy, the difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is poor you, right? Empathy is, man, I'm here with you and I'm going to go sit in the pain with you, right? So that's, and you can't really be empathetic until you've gone through something so difficult where you can empathize with that person. So empathy requires you to have a shared experience. Sympathy's poor you, sorry for you. Oh man, that sucks. You got to go through that. It's all pushed off onto them. Empathy is, man, can I come sit with you in this dark hole and this pain? And I don't have anything to say, but I'll just experience it with you. Most people are not willing to go sit in the pain with people as they experience. So you can sit in it, right? And so you don't have to go through the experience to actually experience pain with people, but to fully understand what someone else is going through, you do have to have had some level of context and experience. So yeah, it's like the pain that we go through, right? Because again, life for me can get easy, but yet when my wife's struggling with difficult things, it's sometimes hard for me to connect and go there because I'm grinding, I'm creating success in a lot of areas, and yet my wife's being challenged in some areas. And so, yeah, I could see how we could, when we're creating a lot of success in life, that could flow to the way we show up with our kids.
Right. And I love what you said, Ruck, that your mess is your message. And that it's actually the worst parts of your life, the hardest times of your life that you need to lean on, that you need to talk about, because only then are you really empathizing. Only then, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And so you're finally getting in the hole with them and saying, I've been there, and I'm not going to give you the answers on how to get out, but I'm going to sit here with you until you ask me for help to get out.
So good. What would you say is something you've done well with your kids? A lot of the listeners here have kids or married. What's something that you've done a great job at, and you're kind of proud at the way you've led or poured into them?
Yeah. So, first of all, listen to mentors, and there's nothing new under the sun. And so for me to try to invent anything on my own just makes no sense. There's smarter people than me, there's more experienced people than me that have already been down this path. And so what I'm about to tell you was something that was shared with me by this group of mentors that I talked about earlier. As I asked them, how do you balance your work and your home life? Particularly for this one individual who was the Intel CEO and formerly the VMware CEO, just traveling all around the world, and he's got 4 kids, and just imagine the demands on his time and how that equates to his home life. And he talked about finding not the work-life balance, which is saying I have 24 hours in a day, and I'm going to carve out this much time, and I'm going to carve out an extra hour for work on this day, which means an hour less for my family on that day. He said, find the work-life harmony. And what that means is you're not taking from one and giving to the other. Work-life harmony is when you seek out experiences that professionally will also enrich your family life personally. And so this is a great example. The professional endeavor, I'm here helping out with the Ruck team. This is a for-profit company, and I couldn't be happier. And of course, all the other spiritual things that go along with it. But this is a business, and I'm helping you to make it successful for the effort of the revival that I think can be on their side of it. And so that's a professional endeavor. And I got to tell my kids about that. And I got to sit with them and have this work-life harmony come together and say, this is what dad's choosing to do for dad's opportunity for self-improvement, not to improve myself this time though, but to improve the version of me that gives this to other people. And it was just really powerful for them to see that. Another thing is I'll take my kids on work trips that I think they'll get something out of. And by the way, not every room of colleagues likes that when my son is sitting in the back. Some of them are like, why is this kid sitting here? And
so you actually do that?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Man, that's great.
Yeah.
That is, that's special.
I have my kids interview the people there. We get videos of it, and ask whatever question they've got.
Oh, that's great. So when you're in a room with successful guys, you actually allow the kids to ask questions and dig in, and then you record that to save that for later. Wow. That's special. I'm just thinking out loud. I'd love to do that. I've had Brendan involved at some of the events, is just watching in the background, and I've actually had him speak because he's been doing gratitude journaling since he was, I believe, 6 years old. Jessica wrote a journal. So and these guys are every single day, writing 3 things he's grateful for. He has this whole journal he does daily. And yeah, we have grown men that can't figure out how to be consistent to journal gratitude or to journal each day, right? So it's just, I have him share his story with the guys. And they're like, oh, wow. He's 11 now. And so I would love to do more of that, though. I'd love to get the kids more involved and engaged, just to have them, to have their life experience be so much more mature, comprehensive, and colorful.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially since we get to see so much, you've seen so much through your life story. You've written a book about it, so they have that. That's wonderful. But there are also things that you've seen that they won't see unless you share them, right? I think all the time, I've sat in a plane at 50,000 feet and seen like the Aurora Borealis up in Alaska, but I was all by myself. The only person that knows what that looks like is me. And that's great. I love having that experience. There came a point, though, where I said, how can I be a part of these experiences with the people I love the most? I don't just want that memory in my head. That's a great one for me at 25 years old. I want to be able to experience those adventures with my kids, too.
Yeah, it was neat. We went to Japan. I mentioned that to you for almost a couple months ago, and that was just an incredible journey. And that's our goal. We won't be able to do that right now. We're back in school. We were homeschooling for a year. We put him back in school. So I'd love... I have so many thoughts. Something that comes up for me when I look and when I talk to you, right, is the balance between grinding and being satisfied, right? And so what I've been navigating, right, is where is that balance? And so there's our current culture is grind, create success. But there's also a growing movement of, hey, don't work too hard, take it easy, just be satisfied the way you are now, right? And that's especially in the Christian realm. I get a lot of Christian haters that are anti-building at a rapid pace, and they're just not. They're more concerned with making sure they follow their Sabbath than building something great that impacts people. I'm a Sabbath guy too, so I love the Sabbath, but that's the thing they'll hit on, right? Is, hey, make sure, are you doing your Sabbath? Hey, are you getting enough rest? Hey, yes, thank you. I do take all weekends off. However, so when I see you though, it's very difficult to build anything excellent and to become excellent when you're not committed to it and you're not giving all of yourself to something. And so I feel like you've built excellence because you've really given all of yourself. As a fighter pilot, right, you gave all, and giving all of yourself doesn't mean you have nothing left for the family, but you went all in on some things, and it created excellence in your life, right? And you went all in business, and it created excellence, like you're an excellent person in that space. I see a lot of people that are not creating excellence. They are not an excellent human being. They haven't chose a lane and become the master at it, right? And they've kind of just casually done business and casually done these things, but they really haven't turned up the fire and given all of themselves, maybe for a fear of being out of balance. So when I see you, I see a man that's gone all out and also a guy that's created great harmony in his relationships and is a good father and a good husband. So you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah. So this is a really important lesson that came out of the cancer battle. So at the point of time I got cancer, 10 years into my flying journey, flying initially was exceptionally hard. And, it's as hard and as overwhelming as you can imagine. I lived in a house with 4 other guys that I graduated the Air Force Academy with, and I'll never forget, all really strong, incredible guys that you'd be proud to know, strong men. And one of them, every morning, didn't fail. I still have a vision of this in my head. As we get ready to go to the flight room, he'd be outside on the deck throwing up off the deck because he's just so terrified of this primal fear of like strapping a plane on your back and hurling yourself into the sky. And very natural fear, by the way. We all had it. But fast forward 10 years, and I've been doing this for so long that it became rote memorization. And I could literally think about my laundry list of things to do while I was flying, just like driving a car, right? And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to show how much I got into my comfort zone. And now I get cancer, and it's the end of my life, 18 months left. And I'll never forget, I was so mad that I languished so long in what was my comfort zone. And the reason I was is because I knew innately that it was the growth that felt good. It was the building something that felt good. And for the last 5 years of my fighter pilot time, I'd signed a lot of autographs. I did a lot of NFL flybys. I'd done a lot of other things that felt good to my ego, but not much that was actually growing me, growing the team. Felt like I was, becoming bigger than I was the year before, besides in my own mind, right? And I was just devastated to learn I'd never feel that again when life was over. And so this is where the book came from. It was basically me saying to God, all the things that I do differently, if I got that second chance and this isn't fair, and I would live my life this way, that way, and the other. And there's a great quote that the dying have the most to teach us about life. And it's true, because in those moments, all the other noise is stripped away and you're left with only what matters and what should have mattered all along. And said, God, this is what I would have done differently. And then God called my bluff. And he's like, all right, no cancer. Let's see, what are you going to do? And then I had to go, well, this is really comfortable flying the airplane. I feel really good. There's a temptation to stay in that world even then, but I made a leap, and I got uncomfortable, and I started grinding, and I started building, and I failed countless times. Don't mistake this for, it's an upward hockey stick path of success. Countless times for whatever successes I was afforded, but it was that growth that felt good. And I would say to those men who are, the Sabbath is their main focus and the rest is their main focus, don't languish there. Like you're missing some of the best parts of life with being uncomfortable, with being afraid, with, putting yourself out there. That's when you're really alive. That's when, as soon as I was the dumbest guy in the room in my MBA class again, and not the smartest guy in the cockpit like I had been before, it was invigorating to try to do this. And the most important part is, because of cancer, this is not something I had to do. This was not my life resume so that I would, die with all the boxes checked. This was not pressure on myself to go be a CEO for a title. This was all of those things I learned meant nothing. Nobody cares. No, your mom might care, but that's it. Nobody else is paying any attention to whatever accolades you have. So you don't have to do these things. But for a guy like me who's going to die in 18 months, I get to do them now. And that one little word change has made all the difference in life.
Men come alive when they live life on the edge. Like when we're living life on the edge and giving all of ourselves, and there's risk, that's where we truly come alive. And there's so many men that are in places of comfort and they're just wasting away. And they don't realize what's wrong or what's off. Man, you're not on the edge. You're not risking yourself. You're not putting yourself out there. But that's where we thrive as men. That's the way God designed us. Like we need to go take some big risks and challenge ourselves and do something so uncomfortable where we don't know how it's going to work out. Like that's where we catch on fire.
And don't mistake success for living on the edge, because success can very often be the comfort zone you need to get out of. I was successful as a fighter pilot. I was very good at what I did. After 10 years, everybody should be at that point, right? But it was 100% my comfort zone.
Yeah. Wow. Any last words? We could end on that. There's so much wisdom right there. But any last words of wisdom that you'd love to, you'd like to give the listeners? Anything that, yeah.
Yeah, I'll go back to my testimony, and where God really showed up in my life. It showed up countless times, but this is the one that matters the most to me. And this was about 6 weeks into my cancer journey, and so that's 6 weeks of what I described in the beginning of staring at the fan and not sleeping at night, not sleeping during the day. I was a zombie. The news just kept getting worse, and at this point, at least, we'd pulled out most of my son's lung to get that tumor out. And that looked like it hadn't spread, and that we contained it in this one place. And so that was good news. And so theoretically, he's in a path to recovery. But for me, it's the opposite. I'm a path to death, according to everything that's being told to me. And I get access to this hospital, MD Anderson, which is just the best hospital you can get to. And in the military, that's pretty hard to do because we have our own government healthcare, and they don't like you to spend a ton of money, which is what the civilian side does. And so I had to fight for this, and I got it. I'm 6 weeks into my journey, and I have the best cancer doctors in the world that are soon going to look at me. And I'm driving the car to Houston to go visit these doctors. And as the miles tick by, I have this overwhelming sense of dread. And I can't put my finger on it because I've already gone through 6 weeks of knowing I had cancer. There's nothing special about this day, besides the fact I'm going to get better help than I'd had in the past. So it should be a good day. But as I get closer and closer, just overwhelming, sick to my stomach, feeling of dread. And my wife's with me, and the boys are in the back seat. And I'm just really quiet. Don't say a word the last hour. And we get to the hospital, and I jump out of the car. My wife takes the car and drives away to go park it. And I was just me there. And I'm walking up to this building in MD Anderson in downtown Houston. And as I'm doing this, I look up into the sky. It's just a massive skyscraper like all the others in downtown Houston, except this is a hospital with people with cancer in it. And it dawns on me why I'm so overwhelmed in this moment. And it's because I'm walking into the building that I'm going to die in. And it's not going to be today, but by Christmas, I'll be dead. Certainly by the following Christmas, this will be, I don't know which window I'll be looking out of, but one of these rooms is where I'm going to die. And it just came crashing down to me in that moment. And I'll never forget. I closed my eyes and I looked up and tears are streaming down my face. And I said, God, this isn't fair. I said, I've done what you wanted me to do all my life. I've made the good decisions mostly, very prideful, and just very much saying that I don't deserve this. I said, I'm 33 years old. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm going to be dead in a year. I'm going to leave my wife widowed to raise these kids. And I'm 33, barely started life. And this is not fair. You need to heal me now. And I opened my eyes, and I was just seething with anger at God. And I'll never forget, as soon as I open my eyes, I lock eyes with another person. And she's about 20 feet away, and she's looking right at me. And I'll never forget, just beautiful blue eyes, like the most beautiful blue eyes I've ever seen. And she's staring right at me, and she has no hair, and she's very frail, and she is being pushed into the hospital by who I assume was her father, and she's about 8 years old. And as she's locking eyes with me, I can tell that she's afraid. I can see that there's fear behind those eyes as she's being wheeled into this hospital, probably for the 50th time, to have some more pain, to have more bad news, whatever else is waiting for her inside there. And in that moment, I was get choked up when I tell the story. In that moment, all of my self-pity evaporated. And I said, God, don't help me. Help that little girl that is going into this hospital and she's taking this on. She's not a fighter pilot. She hasn't done the things I've done. She's not going to live to be a teenager. She has none of the strength to fall back on that I have. Don't help me. Help her. And she gets pushed into the hospital and the doors close behind her. And I'm just left with this moment. Like, what the heck just happened? I went from my lowest low I've ever had, the most sorry I've ever felt for myself in my entire life, and some would say justifiably so after what we'd endured. And it, like a light switch, all of that went away. All of my self-pity went away. And I said, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I'm 33 years old with a beautiful wife and 2 kids. Don't help me. Help her. And I said, if you can change me in that moment, I'm going to trust you in every moment after this. And I like to say that, God answered my prayer literally that second. If you remember my prayer, when I opened my eyes, I said, God, you need to heal me. And he did that. He didn't heal me in the way I wanted, because I still had cancer. I was still walking to the cancer hospital, but he healed me in the way that I needed. It literally showed up the next second when my eyes opened, my prayer was answered. And I've lived my life differently since that moment.
Wow. I almost feel like that was the Holy Spirit speaking in you, right? Giving you that aha. And he speaks to us that way through those subtle moments. Man, so powerful. Well, brother, thank you for your vulnerability, for your honesty, for your care. And yeah, man, I look forward to getting to connect with you more and making a difference together and just seeing where this goes, dude. So thank you again for being on here. Appreciate you big time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Skylar.